Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go. Hey everyone, it's George, and I'm back with you for another Flashback Friday. This is where I'm going through my first 20 videos back when I was really green and new to YouTube, didn't have a lot of subscribers, and didn't do premieres. And so I never got to really talk to people during these broadcasts. And so now's my chance to go back and do a little rewind and have some fun looking at these old videos and seeing what I missed at the time, seeing things from a different perspective, and being able to give you some additional information. For example, a big criticism of my early videos was that I didn't talk enough about prices, so now I can tell you what sold and how much it went for. So let's go on with this video, and we'll take a look at what we were doing a little over a year ago. So this is where I get to talk over myself a little bit. I was originally doing these videos as Periscope broadcasts, and so I would take a lot of time to explain to the people who I was and what I was doing. Periscope's a live stream, and so it's a little more interactive, but that means it's a little different in terms of YouTube pre-record. You see the shirt I'm wearing? Let's talk about that for a minute, because it's actually my favorite shirt. It's a Duke Kahanamoku, and he was the fellow who was the first major Olympic surfer. He was from Hawaii, and he really popularized surfing in a way that it's just been a mania ever since. And he was licensed, his name was licensed to do a bunch of these shirts in the late 60s, and I found this in California, a little bit north of Los Angeles, in one of my favorite antique malls. And I've been, gosh, lovingly taking care of it and wearing it on occasion ever since, because I just love the thing. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here, because this guy talks a lot at first. So let's see. We'll just let him kind of blather on for a minute while I'm doing the big setup. The setup for this video is that I'm getting ready and packing to go to a big flea market in Packwood, Washington that happens twice a year. It is amazing. It's just gigantic. It's the closest thing to a highway sale that we have out west. And the thing, it just basically takes off on Highway 12 up near Mount Rainier. It happens every Memorial Day and every Labor Day, and thousands of people come out and they just sell anything. It could be garbage out of their house, it could be high-end antiques. So these are the things I was packing to take with me to the show. This one is great. It's Blanco, it's Tangerine, it's one of their Ewers. This would have been a Wayne Husted design. He came out with these in the early 60s, and you've got the Tangerine, and then that one is the Peacock color, and Peacock was in the line in the mid 60s. So these are going to be from about 1964, 65. It's got the big foil label on it. One of these unfortunately came to a bad end. That'll be in the next video, next Flashback Friday, but one of them made it to the show, and they did eventually sell. I think I paid $35 a piece for them, and I got $75 for the one that survived. So now this thing's really neat too. This is a carved shell, and it's done like a cameo, so it's from Italy, and you can see you've got Poseidon, and he's being carried by the dolphins or sea serpents. There's a mermaid above. This one's really got everything, and it was such a nice carving and such an interesting scene. I think I got 75 or 85 for this, as I remember, and I think I only paid $10, so that was a nice thing to find at an estate sale. And silver always does really well at shows. People are really into silver, not silver plate. They're not really interested in that so much these days, mostly, but they'll buy sterling silver, and those have a mark called Sanborns on the bottom. And Sanborns is from Mexico. They've been producing since I think the 1940s, and Mexican silver is really good, and it's starting to really get noticed in the marketplace. I believe those went for 95 for the pair. And then there's this perfume bottle. This one is Alexandrite glass, and Alexandrite has a really great color changing property, kind of like uranium glass. The Alexandrite, you see, it's this really great purple color because I'm a combination of natural light and uh, certain kind of incandescent. But if you hold it up to fluorescent light, that thing will turn blue instead of purple. And so the color spectrum really varies depending on the light source with that particular shade. And a lot of people collect it just because it has that color changing property. And then, oh yes, I do a lot of boudoir shows, and I noticed in Packwood, even though it's up in the mountains, that women come and they really like the things for the dresser, and so that was Hermes, and that sold for about $15. Which, if you think of how expensive Hermes perfume is, that was a good deal for someone. I also got this really cute mirror here. This actually came from Kentucky. I look for things like this in the part of the country where people are not necessarily decorating this way and take them out to where they will sell. This is Hollywood Regency style with the gold and the cherubs. It's very Zsa Zsa. It's kind of over the top, but the mirror is good. And you can see I was recording with my phone. I used to use the phone camera a lot more. The quality has improved since I changed that. This is a Limoge dresser tray, and this is all hand painted. This is actually something my mother got at a garage sale. She likes to go garage sailing, and she doesn't get around a lot on her own anymore. But when I made this video, she was still driving, and she got this, I think, for $5. And it's got the, what's that mark? Let's see. It's the Limoges TST mark, I believe. And it's pretty, it's hand painted. I believe that this sold for $25 at the show, and she only paid 5, so she was pretty happy with that. And so was I. It went to a nice lady from Washington State. We got so many people at the show that I was doing, and that'll be one of the upcoming Flashback Fridays, is to show you some of that show. It's really incredible. It didn't happen this year, but it will next year, I'm sure. That gold tone pin I just set down is a Trifari. And then this one is something that looks like Juliana, but I think it's a knockoff. It's stacked in a way, and it has the interesting inverted stones and a lot of color, but it's a little small, and the metalwork isn't quite as good. Those both sold for about 20 a piece. And, there's a lot of call for costume jewelry at shows. Women just love it. And especially now, because you get a lot of bang for your buck, as opposed to not everyone has a fine jewelry budget these days. So costume is definitely really popular, especially vintage. I got cap guns. I always look for cap guns. I got a big collection at an antique mall in Georgia, Big Peach Antique Mall. I ended up doing a video there. And I had, on a previous trip, bought a bunch of cap guns, and they all sold to one friend of mine. He just wanted the whole collection and has most of it still. So I went and then looked for some individual ones, and this one's a good one. It's a flash, it's a 6-shooter. I think I got 50 or 55 for that one. And then this one's pretty old. This one's Kenton with the K there. That's the Kenton Company. And this would have been made in the 1930s, so it's a little older style. Because the Western stuff really, the movies really kicked into high gear in the 30s. And then by the 50s, most of those movies were being rebroadcast on television, and they got another boost. So the Spurs, also Western in general, does really well in Washington State with this show in particular. And the mark that you saw there, that was US 1916. So these are from the cavalry from World War One, and that's why people like these sorts of things. And those spurs sold for $40 for the set, which for cavalry spurs is pretty good, actually. I've seen them priced a lot higher than that, but I got a good deal, and I pass good deals on when I can. So here is a cool old sign. This is something you see in the Midwest, particularly with all the farm roads and the little towns. You would see little arrows where there was an intersection with an ad saying it pays to trade at such and such place. And there would be the arrow directing you to it. And I knew this would sell in Washington State because they don't have very many of these out there. And also because it's aeroplane and with Boeing. So it sold for $65 immediately. This also sold for $65 immediately, which I'm sure seems like a good price for a little hand-hewn wooden spice cabinet. This is going to be 1890s primitive. But the thing is, I got it really cheaply in the Midwest. I think I paid 15 for it. I know there's dealers out west who would put 100 plus on that, but I like to sell things, and I like to sell things quickly if I can and make people happy, and then I get to go buy more. So that's how you get to be a nomad, is you keep it moving, and you keep yourself moving in the process. But it was a neat little piece, and it didn't last long. I've got to say, all of this stuff did really well. The show that I took these to, which I'll have that video next Friday, the first of a couple from there, it was the best antique show I've ever done in terms of sales in my entire career. It was fantastic. Almost all this stuff sold. This guy, of course, is R2D2, and I'm going to talk over the part in the original video where I called him C3PO. Oh, brother. I certainly know better than that. I think trying to do this live and spontaneously, I just, yeah, I got a case of the nerves. It's funny how practice makes perfect. Well, not perfect, but better. And then Smurfs, the Smurfs all sold right away. I have to say, Smurfs were a little after my time, but there's a whole generation of people who love the Smurfs, remember the Smurfs. I think they went for about $5 each. And little Snoopy pencil sharpener, I finally sold this guy. It took a little longer than I thought. I think he got kind of lost in a case with a bunch of other stuff, but he sold for $8 or $10. And, you know, the 70s era Snoopy stuff, there are, again, a lot of people that generation who are collectors now, and so that's why we look for those things. This appeals to a slightly older collector because the Beatles were a 60s era thing, of course, but this is an original Beatles headband, and that thing sold for $40. I was really surprised to see one brand new in the original wrap. I think very few of them are left because people took them out and wore them, and after, you know, screaming and sweating in them at a Beatles concert, well, that was the end of them. And then I'm for Beatles. This has the little letters that say NEMS. That was the original company license to do the Beatles memorabilia. So if you're out there looking and you're wanting to make sure you don't have a fake, look for NEMS on the items. This Budweiser, this is an interesting correlation. The part of Kentucky I spend time in has hydroplane racing, or at least they did historically, and Seattle, Washington has a huge event every year called Seafair where there's hydroplane racing. And so there is interest in both places. So I look for hydro stuff and kind of shift them back and forth between the two. And then lighters, I always do well with cigarette lighters. I have a guy who comes to the show that these went to, who buys a few of my better ones right at the beginning and then says, I'll be back on Sunday. And he comes back faithfully every Sunday. And whatever I haven't sold in lighters, he then makes me an offer and takes everything I have left. And that's exactly what happened this time. So he bought the first one I showed you there with the logo right away, and then he got the gold one as part of a package deal. I think I paid $7 a piece for those, and I got 20 for one, and I think he paid me 12 or 14 for the other one. So they are interesting to take on a plane with you, and I took all this stuff on a plane. And so you have to kind of beware, you know, don't have them with fluid or that sort of thing so that they don't get confiscated. And these things are kind of cool. I sold some of these. I still have some left because I bought a bunch. And they are railroad armbands that you would put on so that you would be able to designate that you were being safe, and also to keep your sleeves rolled up to keep you safe and keep your sleeves out of your work. If you were doing mechanical work or things with gears, you don't want to get things caught. And these were done in 1977. This was the old Illinois Central Gulf Railroad. And they ended up merging into a bunch of other railroads, so there was new old stock left, and I bought some of it. And then celluloid tourist knives. I like pocket knives. They do really well at shows. They sell to guys, and some of these types sell to women. The one with the church actually went to a lady for $15, and the other one went to a guy for $15. And here is a tire ashtray. Tire ashtrays are a really fun form of advertising to me. They used to give them out at tire stores, and they'd send one home with you so you would remember to buy Silvertown tires when you went back the next time. A lot of them were used to death and have been burned to death and stained and are in horrible shape, but you can find clean ones, and they sell from 20 to 35 a piece depending on what they are. And then this thing sold for 45. This is 600-volt danger brass sign from a railroad engine. When they started doing the diesel electrics, you have a lot of electricity coursing through those things, and so you've got signs like this on railroads. And people love railroad memorabilia. Still to this day, it's a very popular collectible. The railroads keep running, and so it translates generation to generation. And then this is a swatch, and swatches are coming back into style. The little ring sticking up there is actually the thing that's worth the most. You can sell those for about $15 or $20 as an extra accompaniment, because most of those little safety rings that were supposed to keep the face from getting scratched, well, they're usually torn off and long missing, so people will buy those for their watch. The watch itself is fairly plain, but it is geometric, and I think that the package there is about a $40 swatch watch. And some of them are selling for pretty good prices. They did a lot of art lines, and those are popular now. And let's see here. Oh, yes, I didn't sell this until several shows later, but I met a political memorabilia collector who liked this. The signature and the guy in the upper right corner there is Hubert Humphrey, HHH. Hubert H. Humphrey was a representative from Minnesota, and he was going to be president. And he ran in 1968, and he ran on a very typical Democratic platform at a time when there was a lot of call for progressive change. There ended up being riots outside of the convention in Chicago, and it ended up really bringing down his presidential hopefulness. And so he never was president, but he worked for Encyclopedia Britannica afterwards, and he signed that piece of paper, and it sold for $20. And then, speaking of paper, well, here's some special paper. This is a 1966 version of Playboy with Jane Mansfield, and that's what makes it special, is that there she is peeking out from under the corner there. And Jane Mansfield was a very interesting celebrity. She had a notable characteristic, and she flaunted it very much. She was rather busty, and so she became famous by diving into the pool when they were screening that terrible underwater movie with Jane Russell that Howard Hughes made. And she jumped into the pool, and her top accidentally floated off, and she was immediately photographed and became discovered and became an actress. And this is all we can show. But the fact that it is intact and it's early and it's a celebrity makes this magazine worth about $20, which is what I sold it for. And that's the reason that I had that one. I'm not generally a smut peddler, but in the case of this sort of thing, nowadays by current standards, this is considered pretty tame stuff. And it's really more about the fact that it's in good condition and that it had someone famous in it. And of course, Playboy now, it's funny, after all those years of joking about how, oh, I read it for the articles, well, they don't do nudity anymore, so you do read it for the articles. So anyhow, that was my little haul video getting ready for this show. And I had a lot of fun at the show. I can't wait to show you that on the next flashback. And I am going to, oh, I'm showing one more thing. Okay, yes, that's the Georgia Olympics. And let's see here. We'll let that play out. So that last license plate was from the Georgia Olympic Games. I'm finding that there is a lot of interest in that because that was 1996. So by Etsy standards, that's vintage. And by my standards, well, it's been almost 25 years. So we're getting close to vintage. It's true. And I am finding that a lot of people collect Olympic memorabilia, and Georgia is definitely one of the ones on the list, along with Salt Lake City, Vancouver. There's more interest in Olympic collecting because we've had several Olympics in North America now. And so I think that that has gotten people more energized about it. Anyhow, it was really fun to bring this flashback to you. I'll have more next week and on for the next number of weeks. So we'll see you there. I'm George the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And bye-bye for now. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below. Click the bell to be notified when new videos upload. Leave a comment below and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.